All right, this is Rebecca Prinster, Assistant History Curator at the Albuquerque Museum. It is October 7th, 2019, and I am with Jill Hartke, the Digital Archivist here, and Kathleen Schwartzman. This is the first time that we have interviewed Kathleen, and we are in the photo archives at the museum. So, Kathleen, if you could please state your name, your birth date, and birthplace.
Kathleen Schwartzman. The date of my birth is October 5, 1942, and I was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Happy belated birthday.
Yeah.
All right, so we wanted to ask you when and how you got involved with the museum.
Okay, I saw that the museum was being built at the old airport. They were just opening and starting to promote the city having a museum. And it was in the 60s. And so I was a young mother and recently married with a child, and I said that I really wanted to get involved in museum work because my parents, my father especially, was an aficionado of museum exploration, and he loved to go to them. And I said, oh, this is wonderful. You know, it's ground level, and I get to walk in the door and say, hi, I want to help.
And so what was your initial...
The initial thing that I did was, let's see, the first things I did were to work with Peg Hooten, who started the museum shop. Peg had a gallery in Old Town called Workshop Originals, and it was a really nice import artsy kind of store. She was very well respected. She was married to Bob Hooten, and Bob was a faculty member at the University of New Mexico in the arts department. And so Peg was over here, and she was helping the director, Frank Crabtree, getting the ground level of the opening of the, not only the opening, but just to get things established here. And so she started to make plans to do the museum shop. It's called La Tienda del Museo. And she said, Kathy, you should run it. And I said, I don't know anything about this. And she says, I'll teach you. So I took that over, and we started ordering books and artifacts and small pieces of some little pots and things that people would be interested in that would inexpensive, because it was a very small shop. It was right at the entrance, off to the right. You walk through the doors into the airport building, off to the right, and there were a couple of tables there. There was one of her glass counters, I believe, that was left over from shops, an Old Town shop, and she put bricks and boards on the wall and put the books up there, and it was really interesting. They had history books and art books and a nice selection of New Mexico interest books that, of course, at that time there wasn't a lot of them. There were a few. Ruth Armstrong was a writer, and she had gotten involved with the museum, Ruth Armstrong, and she had a daughter that eventually worked on the museum book sales, the used book sales, and that was Diana Boone. Her name was Diana Boone. But Ruth had a good experience in, she was a well-known writer, historical writer for this area, and so she wrote several books, and she's an author. And so I did that. I worked on in the bookstore for a while, and eventually wanted to move into the board, and so I got next was Docent. I was a docent, and I think I was a docent for about 3 years maybe, and that was good because we had the exhibits that were constructed with actual historical pieces, chairs, tables, bowls, shawls, and things, and it was all geared for public participation, and children could come by and touch things, and there were certain things that were touchable. But that was all behind glass, and it was historical, and it was very interesting. Like dioramas is the type of thing that they had. But they were actual full-size artifacts, so they were behind glass. And docenting at that time was just as interesting as it is today, I'm sure, probably much more. But it was very historical, quite historical. Let me see if there was anything. But when we would have a science, that was the Art, History, and Science Museum. There were 3 components to it. And so there were scientific things as well that were on exhibit there.
Did you help put the exhibits together?
No, I didn't do the exhibits. No, I wish I had, but I was not trained for any of that. I was just a volunteer. But a docent, of course, has to learn all of the background material and information in order to be able to explain it to the public. So we did a pretty good job. And let's see, the public would come through individually or in groups, and we would take them as they came. There was no special arrangement or anything. So that was good, and I did that for about 2 or 3 years, maybe 3 years, and then I wanted to get on the board, and I volunteered there and was voted as secretary, and so I was secretary for a few years, and then along came the bond issue, and so I volunteered to be president. And everyone was like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this bond issue? And so, but it was just seemed to be the thing to do, to really promote it, and we had the history of it. Dick Bice was the chairman of the board of trustees. There was a lot of civic involvement. A lot of the government, municipal leaders were getting behind it, particularly Harry Kinney, who was the mayor, and there was a lot of movement. Even the newspapers, the Albuquerque Journal and the Albuquerque Tribune, got involved in it in a way, but it was, it had failed twice before, so people were a little nervous about this, and so I as president of the Museum Association, we had a very tiny treasury, but we a couple $1,000 is all we had. I don't remember exactly, but I thought that it might be a good idea if we hired a public affairs agency, and so we did, and I got one individual, and her name was Marjorie Neset, Neset, and Marjorie and I basically became the workforce from the association's point of view on the museum bond issue. And so I don't know whether you can imagine, but we were out there attending meetings, attending group, let's see, what did we do? We went and spoke to some groups. We certainly had to get political help, because Albuquerque is very political, so we tried, we wanted to enlist the support of politicians and newspapers, but there was a lot of groundwork that we did in distribution of leaflets, in calling the media, and doing whatever we could to promote this from a nonprofit associated point of view. We really were not spokespeople for the museum, because that was the trustees and the director. But we felt that it was, it was part of our job too, to be able to pass this bond issue, and we did. We worked really hard on it. So, what else would you like to know about that?
Did you want to ask?
You're really good at this. And everything we wanted. Oh, I did wonder. So when the building opened here and everybody moved from the airport to this building, were you still involved?
I was not so much involved anymore, no. But they called me. I still had friends on the board, and I was asked to do the opening. And I did not a very good job, unfortunately, because there was not any money. There was very little money to do it. But we worked on a large mailing list that was local and even spread out a little bit to other museums nationally, just to let them know that we were doing this. And it was well attended when the opening actually happened, but we had little problems, like
What?
like running out of food.
Oh no.
And the liquor was late, and we had to beg a lot of people because we had no money, you see, and so we had to get people to do a lot of this gratis, and they did. They came through, but and they were really helpful. One of the things that was the flower association, the gardening associations. We went to them because we had no money for flowers, and we asked the gardening association to help us out. So they put together a really interesting display with their own invented creations stacked on glass cubes and shelves in the center, around with the food around the edge, and the food was from La Chantilly, and La Chantilly was a very was a favorite bakery caterer in the city, but unfortunately we ran out, and they were wonderful. It's just that we ran out. We didn't have enough money to be able to. But so there was that, and who gave us the liquor was donated by the macaques, I think. I think so. And the macaques, of course, were that's the KiMo Theater. I think that was the macaques. Anyway, go ahead and ask me more. But it was so, and then we had to decorate, and so how do I decorate the museum, right? So we went, and I decided that I would ask nurseries in town to donate plants as cactus and palms and flowers and stuff, in natural stuff. They're in the planters that are sitting out on the nursery, but we brought those in. And then we had a lighting company come in and set up theatrical lighting in parts of it on these plants and things. It was amazing. So, but we've done that. We had done this before, this type of decoration in the old museum, where we had to go find ways to make it look like a festival thing, that not just a bare museum. So we had to occasionally come up with other ideas to do that too. And once I went to the cemeteries and asked them for cemetery artificial grass to make a grass mound around some of the exhibits, and that was really funny. Okay, but the opening was the extent of my experience here, and then from then it just became a wonderful place. It just grew and grew into a beautiful, beautiful museum, and I think it's as important as the Scottsdale Museum. Or maybe even better, the Scottsdale Art Museum. I really do think so, but it's a beautiful museum, and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah.
So what years were you the association president?
Just the 2 years that, was it 1 year or 2 years? 2 years, I guess, during the bond issue campaign, so between 78 and 79, 80.
Yeah. We moved in here in 79 because we just found a poster for August 5th, 1979 was the opening day of this. We just found that in the last couple of months.
What was that again?
August 5th, 1979 is the day that this building opened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would have been maybe 77 to 79, somewhere in there. 78. It's hard to say. I have the records. I have to let you know, I probably have a lot of stuff still in my possession in writing. But I know that you wanted to talk, and I can send you information.
Okay.
If you give me an email address, I'd be very happy to do that.
Yeah. So I have a question about Frank Crabtree, because he's going to be a part of this story.
Okay.
So but nobody that we've spoken to really knew him very well. Did you have conversations with him?
Oh,
What was your overall feeling about him?
Oh, he's a very enthusiastic director. He was very enthusiastic, very positive, very hardworking. He took it personally, and he really wanted to do his best in this museum, in the whole idea of having a museum. And he was very helpful to new people and had great ideas, and was responsible, I believe, for a lot of the interesting exhibits that came here in the old airport. So I believe that he was a good director. He was certainly a good startup director. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the exhibit that he did with these color slides? I think
The slides.
this picture was part of it.
No. I remember not that one.
When was that?
These are Walter MacDonald. I think the slides were taken by a photographer named Walter MacDonald that Frank Crabtree hired to go around town and take pictures for the museum. They were going to do a multimedia show in this space, and it was going to flash slides up on screens, and it was going to have music, and it was going to show. It was called "Have You Seen Albuquerque?" I think is the name of it, and that's the slides that we're going to put in this exhibit that'll open in December. Come from Walter MacDonald from that project.
Oh yeah.
And so some of these are from that, but also some of these I think Frank Crabtree took himself.
Okay.
He was the one I think that was trying to get the staff members so that the museum would have pictures of the people who were helping develop it.
Okay.
So, but did you ever heard of Walter MacDonald?
Oh yes, I do.
You did?
Yeah,
Oh, you
I
did.
did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever meet him?
Yes.
You did.
Excuse me. Yes, I did. I met him. He was, he's a photographer, so you never know very much about photographers, but he was in the background. But yeah, he was a good one.
Awesome.
He's good. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So these are his pictures, and his work is what is actually the foundation of the exhibit that we're doing.
Oh, good.
His work is what will be shown.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, great. Wonderful. Yeah. When I spoke with him, he said he had an office in the airport. He was there a lot, and he was there maybe 8 or 9 months working just on this one project.
Okay.
But great. That's awesome.
Yeah, I know him, but I didn't know what he was doing that particular exhibit. I don't remember that, but that was the curatorial stuff that was going on, and a volunteer isn't part of that exactly. But so I did know a lot of the other exhibits: the quilters exhibit, the keys exhibit, the rockets exhibit. What else was there? There was, of course, the Dick Richard Bice was very involved in pottery, Indian pottery, and so there was Indian pottery exhibit. Let's see. What else was I trying to think of? Laura Gilpin. He had a Laura Gilpin show, photography. She was a very famous photographer. They did a big show on Carnaway, which is the archaeological site on the edge of town. And actually Frank Crabtree got very involved in the Carnaway situation, I believe. And so, when you're a docent, but you just know these things. Frank was there, and then Suzanne, the next director was Suzanne Deborhage. And by the time she came in, the museum bondage had passed by then.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure. And so she came in and it was a different style. It was a lot quieter kind of style, and she just didn't have that energy the same. But she was a wonderful director too, so everyone liked her. It just was a big difference. That's all. But okay, that's good. What else would you like to know? Anything?
I think. Do you have a favorite memory from the museum when it was at the airport?
I probably do. There was some interesting stuff. It was very. People that worked at it were proud of it. The volunteers were pretty proud of it, and the directors were pretty ambitious. The curators. Favorite memory. Let's see. I just liked. I loved the building. Really, I really liked the building. The building had a lot of history in itself, and when they created an exhibition area out of it, it turned out pretty good, and it was good for public access, and it was a nice thing. It just felt like very homey, kind of, and to me it did. But I liked the building, and I liked the industriousness of all the people. That was good.
Was the public pretty invested in it? You said you would take tours as people came in.
They were pretty shy yet, because in the airport they didn't quite understand why it was there. And it takes a while. The thing about Albuquerque is that they have in those days, they have a hard time accepting new things in a big scale, in a big way, because they can't envision it. And so that was the resistance that we had. But what do we need a museum for? We don't need this. We're not whatever. And you had to work with the people. So they kind of shied away from the old building. They didn't really understand much about a museum or why it was there or what its purpose was. But the whole idea, I believe, was to break ground. So for the actual happening of a new institution for the city, and that's when the exhibits became, because of the emphasis on education, because of the emphasis on public spirit, because of the volunteerism, because of the caliber of the exhibits, people started to warm up to the whole idea. And I think that that it worked. It just took a long time. It just took a while, because they opened, I think, in '60s, in the the old building opened 1967.
Yes,
so that's almost 10 years. And it took a long time to do that, but I believe my first years there were in the mid to late 60s. I can't remember exactly, but yeah. And so, it was very personal to a lot of people, because there were a lot of historians in this city, and there are a lot of archivists in this city, and collectors, and they respected, and authors, and they respected the history. And whereas some people here only thought of shopping malls and housing developments and things, but the culture, this was part of the improvement of the establishment of culture by the government. And this is a big thing, because the city had not really invested hugely in the culture. It was all around, but nobody really created the focus for it. And so the city had to step in, and that's why they did that. And that's one of the reasons that Harry Kinney was so much in favor of doing this. And the same thing happened with the KiMo Theater eventually when the other mayor, let's see, what was his name? David Rusk. And David Rusk took the same feeling and worked very hard with promoting the KiMo Theater and getting a performing arts center for the city. And doing a lot more cultural activities in the arts and the theatrical arts and theater arts, and this was our visual arts thing. Now, I don't know what happened eventually, how we lost the science part. I always was curious about that in this museum, but I believe that maybe the university was a little competitive in some areas, and so they felt like their role was diminished in some way by the city. That's just my guess, but I know that when the KiMo Theater came along, after there was a plan to build a new city performing arts center, and that failed but at that time there was a big controversy over where to put this brand new performing arts center, because the KiMo was active during that time and doing pretty well, but when the university found out that there would be a new city performing arts center, they got very involved, and they said, well, we should have it over on our campus and we should be sharing, and they were involved in that. So there was always a little competition, always has been, I think, in the city. But anyway, digressing, what else would you like to know?
We were kind of curious about the science side.
Yeah, don't you know?
Well, we knew about it, and actually the newspaper, somebody was suggesting having a petting zoo, kind of.
Yes. Yeah, we found that in one of the newspaper articles. Somebody saying, other museums around the country have actual, like, petting zoos in the museum. And so that was actually something they had considered for the science side.
Really?
Yeah. And I don't think that ever happened. But it was interesting that the broad creativity and the imagination that was going into the creation of the museum. People were thinking really outside the box about what they could do. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they got their petting zoo, but at the zoo.
At the zoo, yes.
And that's what, cultural services has become a major department in the city. And it should be, because this is a very cultural area. But in the beginning, the only cultural development was in the basket of the library department. And Alan Clark had the cultural activities. He had the zoo. No, he had the Old Town Plaza. He had the KiMo. He had South Broadway Cultural Center. He had the 1% for Art. He had the cable TV. He was a startup. He was very cultural anyway, and he was an excellent administrator as far as being able to describe and talk and defend these things. And he and what else did he have? He had a lot of startup things that had, and they'd give them to him. The mayor said, well, we should, somebody has an idea to do this, we'll give it to Alan. Alan can do it. And so but eventually these things became so big that they had to establish themselves in the right place, not in the library, I guess. And so they had to, that's when the 1% for Art program went to the mayor's office, and or to the development office, and the museum. Where did the museum go? The museum went to its own place, right?
Yeah.
And then the South Broadway was still connected to the KiMo in performing arts, and then now they're all in cultural services, and there's some of it even at the museum here. And so you have a lot of music here now too, musical programs. which is great because the more the merrier,
Yes.
you know, especially how it creates the city to have such a vital and beautiful presence. It just really does have a great image all over, and it just goes on and on. What is it now? It's called Albuquerque One or New
Yes, one Albuquerque.
One Albuquerque.
Uh-huh.
And I said, wow, that is the best slogan I have ever heard for this city. And really, one Albuquerque, that is fabulous.
Yeah, that's our newest mayor. He's the one that came up with that. So he's and we got shirts that say it. We have everything. He's really branding it.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I said, wow, how, and it's about time. I mean, it's right at the right time too. So what else would you like to know?
When did you move away from Albuquerque?
Okay. I was at the KiMo Theater, still working there, and what happened to the KiMo is that we lost our funding to bring in touring shows. And the KiMo was the other performing arts, other presenter. Okay, these are presenting venues. Pope Joy Hall is a presenting venue, and the KiMo was the other. And the reason that it lost, so the KiMo was smaller, and it was a lot more, avant-garde, I guess, a little more artistic. Pope Joy did larger programs and more traditional, like ballet and symphony, which didn't fit in the KiMo. The stage was too small, and the location wasn't good, and that kind of thing. So, but they balanced each other out, and we became more of an avant-garde type of venue. And we were doing pretty well. I think that the budget for South Broadway Culture Center and the KiMo and whatever else we were doing at that time was almost $1 million, and that was back in the late 80s, or mid 80s. But what happened? Everybody got hit really hard in the city with the budget crisis, and the money dried up for everybody, had to cut back. And that's one of the first things that they did was cut out the performing arts budget. The programming budget is called programming. And Marjorie Nessett has been the director there, and she left, and I left a year later, and then the staff left, and so there's really not much right now. Unfortunately, don't tell anybody this, but the KiMo is just a rental facility now. It's not really a presenting theater,
Right, yeah.
but it's well known, pretty well known nationally, because it had some wonderful shows. Marjorie Nessett brought in contemporary dance and some really good music, contemporary music and jazz, and we patched, that was quite a deal. We patched in, there were so many New Mexico, New Mexico, Outpost Productions, and Outpost is here too, aren't they? And that's Tom Gorelnik, and he used to be at the KiMo, and the Upper Southwest was there, and Albuquerque Ballet was there, and so it was hardly ever, New Mexico Repertory Theater, and everybody could pitch in and take part of the season and have their own season in the KiMo. It was a community type theater with backup from the city and money to bring in shows. And so there were some really good shows that came in. But you want to know why? Okay, when I left Albuquerque after they cut the budget, and Marge left it. And Marge is actually here in town. She runs North Fourth Art Center, and she came back. She went to California. I went to California, and that was the end of us. But she came back, and she's still there, and has done a very good contemporary dance program at North Fourth Art Center. But North Fourth Art Center is for handicapped people, and it's what is the name of it? The national name for, anyways, But they built a black box theater there, so that was another theater, but that is not run by the government. That is non-profit and it's private. And it's only for, what is it for? I can't remember who supports it. It's part of a national program. Anyway, so that's what happened to the KiMo. That's how that dissolved, kind of. And it's, I'm hoping someday, because people do remember what the KiMo did, what it could have done, and if there's ever any money here, maybe it will start up again someday with a younger crew and somebody that's very ambitious from somewhere. Because I live in California and I'm close to the California Northridge University of, California State University Northridge is where I am. It's 3 miles. They just built a huge, beautiful performing arts center 8 years ago. And they got a donor of $10 million who just put in to that. And they have a lot of stuff going on. And they know about the KiMo. The director there used to be a director at the, he wasn't a director, he was maybe he was a director or producer or something at the Santa Fe Opera. So there's a lot of people, these people move around. It's quite a big business. It's a big world out there when you do performing arts. And they have all kinds of conferences and places to find art and artists and make deals and get money. And it's great. Anyway, so that's the story. That's how I left. I left after the KiMo, and then I quit. And once I quit, I couldn't find a good job. Getting too personal. Couldn't find. So I went to California, where there's a lot of stuff. Well, there isn't. The thing about California, just between you and me, this is off the record, is. Oh, I'm talking too much.
No. We'll just stop it if you. Yeah.
Okay.
How do I stop it?
All right, so this is Rebecca Prinster, Jill Hartke, and Kathleen Schwartzman. And this same day, October 7th, 2019, we're restarting the recording. So, what was your role at the KiMo? What was your job title?
Marjorie Nessett was the director. I was the administrative assistant.
Okay.
And then we had a lighting person, a sound person, and a publicity box office person. So there were 5 people, and that's what we did. And so I eventually in and out of jobs and stuff like that, and eventually I end up with management professional MP levels 2 and 3, those places. And so I was like assistant director when she was there.
So you went there right after the museum
No.
position? Okay.
No. Wait, did I or didn't? Oh, wait, I missed the part. Here's the big part. We did Downtown Saturday Night. That was the street festival that started Summerfest.
Oh, okay.
And so we were still part of Alan Clark's Nest.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things that the mayor had said, I believe it was David Rusk, he said he wanted to do he told Marge, he says, I want to do something out there with the people, with the cultures. And so he says, here's a city spirit grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. And it was a match grant. And so the city decided that it would be able to come up with the money to match this grant, and it was like $35,000 or something to match. And so Marge was hired, this was before the KiMo, Marge was hired to work this grant, and she hired me. Marge and I had worked together on the bond issue. That was our next step, was to go to Downtown Saturday Night, and we were worked together pretty darn well. And so and of course that's my opinion, but so when she got the job, after we finished the bond issue, she was, she had already made political friends, or at least a good enough reputation. So she was hired then with a degree. She has degrees too, and she was hired to administer Downtown Saturday Night, and then she hired me, and we had a crew, and a lot of it was volunteerism. But that was the streets, the festivals on the streets, the Central Avenue. Do you know anything about that?
Well, yeah. Well,
Okay.
I know what they do now. Now they do Art Walk on every the first Friday of every month.
Okay.
They do it up and down Central, and on 4th they'll close it down.
Those are for the galleries, though.
Yeah, and for the local independent artists, they can sell their stuff. Yeah, it's mostly for the art and the shops along Central to try to bring in businesses.
Right. Okay, that was the whole idea. When the city was in a decline, downtown was in a serious decline, and that's when the KiMo was like trashed. I mean, it was really, they were going to tear it down, and downtown everywhere was just not doing well, and so that's one of the reasons that the Mayor Rusk decided that he wanted to do whatever he could to bring people back downtown, and that's where that City Spirit grant came in, which eventually moved into the KiMo Theater, became the KiMo Theater's emphasis too. But so the Downtown Saturday Night was just a big party, and everybody what we did was focus on different ethnicities to take over certain different nights. There were 10 or 11 nights, Saturdays, and these Saturdays we'd bring in stages and chairs and tables, and the people that would sell food were all the ethnic groups in town. So there would be the Italians one time, and the Native Americans another time, and the Hispanics another time, and so there were these different themes on these Saturday nights, and the papers got into it. We decorated the windows downtown. We had cord, and Parks and Recreation was ordered, I think, to get involved in this because they had the manpower, I think, and so but there were cords and electricity. They couldn't figure out where to get the electricity from outside, and all these booths and for microphones and lighting, and that was amazing. And so that's one of the sound and light companies that helped us with those staging for that, and they are also the ones that I used for the opening of the KiMo, or the opening of the museum. Okay, so that was a big thing. That was very well publicized by the newspaper. I mean, it's like Balloon Fiesta or something, is what it was like. And they just announced what the theme was and what time it started, and it was all free. So the only thing that people had to do was pay for their food and their drinks, and that's all. And so that whole period of time, there was one summer, and that was Downtown Saturday Night's first experience, and I guess. And then we did it a second time only because the Uptown people wanted to be in on it too. So we did Uptown Saturday Night, and that one didn't work very well because, by then we were operating the KiMo Theater. We had moved into the KiMo, and we didn't really have the personnel to do the festival and the KiMo. But so we hired another couple of people to manage that. And that one didn't do very well, but it's okay. So by then, after that, that's when Parks and Rec decided that they wanted to put it on the plaza, because we had had stuff on the plaza ourselves. I think we had. And the Summerfest came after that, and that's how they started to that. But the cultural development of this city is really amazing,
Yeah.
and it works through the city in different ways and different pressures and different plans and things that go that have been really kind of fun to watch. just to watch how this evolution went through. But now it's really professional. So it's it's not amateur like we did. That's what we were starters.
Well, everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah, and it worked. I mean, it woke people up, and that was good. And then the money came eventually. Is sometimes yes and sometimes no, I guess. Huh?
Do you think the museum and places like the KiMo helped bring people together, or was it a certain segment of the Albuquerque population who was attending all these events?
The whole idea, the purpose of it was to get everybody involved. They didn't want just a certain section, and they were anti-elitist anyway. So it was for popular involvement, and that's why it was multicultural, and that's why it was both art and dance and drama and all kinds of, even food was involved in it. So no, it was never directed in any particular group.
You said that the KiMo was almost demolished at one point?
Yeah.
What was that? What was that, urban renewal, or was
Yes.
it was? Okay. So how did it get saved? The city bought it?
The city fought another bond issue.
Okay.
And the city bought it. And so once they bought it, they had to do something with it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's how they got control of the theater, was
Right.
to save it from demolition.
Yeah, and it was people, because a lot of the concerned citizens in this city in those days were very upset. Well, first of all, they tore down the Hilton, and the Hilton was at the Alvarado, and the Hilton along the railroad tracks, and the Fred Harvey thing was gone, and everything, and they didn't want to lose any more historical buildings. And the KiMo was very historical. It was built in 1927. Has a fabulous history, as I wrote some of the history for it. But just a little brief, the brief for the opening. That's all. We have a program that opened it, and then there was a renovation, and of course I don't know what's happened to it since then. As far as writing and documenting, I don't know what they've done.
Yeah.
But I just noticed yesterday there was an article in the journal about the KiMo and about. Did you see that?
The name of it, right?
Yeah,
Talking about
the name.
Yeah.
Pablo Abeta, and how they had a contest.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. I knew that. I mean,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building.
Yeah, it was the
Yeah, it
king
really
of its
is.
kind. Yeah, 1927. 1927. There was that was the Albuquerque family that built that,
Oh, okay.
and that was during the beginning of the film business, the motion pictures. And there were even some of the first films that were in the KiMo were silent, because that was at that particular, in 1927. That's a pretty long time ago, but it didn't take long before they had real sound movies and color. But the Albuquerques were still in town, and they apparently may still be here.
Yeah, maybe so.
I think, yeah.
Because in the article they quoted Oreste, and Oreste Albuquerque, or maybe his son. Oreste was the father who built it. The son is the one I interviewed, and he may still be here.
Okay.
But I don't mean to talk about. I only did this because we had to put this in.
Yeah, you're right.
Plug this stuff in, and not because I was an expert in any of it, but it was part of the program. So.
Well, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to
Well,
add?
let's see, about the museum. I hope that you do talk about how they selected the architect.
For this building?
Yeah.
Yeah. I
That's
don't know. We don't know that story.
I don't either.
Okay. Okay.
I don't either, and I wish I knew. But the architect's story is always good for background, and a lot of people ignore it. But there's that, and then there's, let's see what else. I'm sure that there has been a tremendous amount of a lot of donors to this building now, and to this program now.
Yes.
And so that's another whole beautiful story that someday somebody should write about. Because there weren't any of those kind of donors around when I was there. You know, there were a lot of interested people, and they were classical historians or students, or appreciate. You know, they really appreciated Native Americans and pottery and the tribal stuff and the history of the city. And God bless them, you know, they had the lifeblood for a lot of this stuff. They were the ones that insisted on promoting a real museum and a real theater, but the museum was the big thing. So, and these are the bond issues here, huh?
Yeah, those are the two that failed. Yep. And
Okay.
how much they failed by and stuff. We're going to put that in.
Yeah, I think ours passed in like 256 votes or 276.
Passed by that much?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you did a lot of work, because you can see how much,
Oh yeah.
talking by thousands, they're
Yeah.
failing. So,
Yeah, 207. I think it should be in the record somewhere. The thing is that there's really good documentation if you look for it.
Yeah.
But it's buried now.
Uh-huh.
It's just, you know, they don't really keep it around very long. And but it's there in the city records, and then also in the newspapers.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, we've
And
been
the
fishing.
people, I know this woman. I remember these faces. This one particularly.
Okay.
This woman, and I can't. Ortiz, I think is her name.
Okay.
Ortiz. Carmen Ortiz, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. It's a maybe.
Awesome.
You have any other pictures of people?
Of people? Let me see. We have...
This is such a cool building.
Yeah.
Really was. What are they using the building for now? Out at the airport.
It's like
Do you
a
know?
Post office over
Is
there.
it a post office? Oh, that's all right. As long as they take good care of it.
This is Frank Crabtree, is that right? I'm
Yeah.
hoping?
Oh,
Okay,
definitely.
good. Yeah,
That's
so we'll
Frank.
have him in there.
Should I turn this on?
Yeah, it's
All right.
probably good.